Behind every face is a feeling. But more often than we'd like to admit, our faces and feelings don't always match. Because some struggles live under the surface, under the skin, anxious, fearful, lost. We hate to admit it, but those faces and feelings are there. They're real. Around us and inside us, hidden in the shadows of our hearts. It's no wonder we feel alone, unseen, or even misunderstood. But hope is found in the place where the shadows come into the light. Hope is found in knowing you're not alone. Help is found in the courage to honestly and regularly answer one very simple yet very profound question. How are you feeling?
Well, good morning. My name is Dave. I'm campus pastor here, and it is an honor to be with you as we do this together, this 3-week series of How You Feeling. So how you feeling? I heard a lot of goods. You can get people all angry. Stop it. I heard it though. I heard the answer. Basically the outline, the textbook, the answer that everybody gives when that question is asked, how you doing or how you feeling, the answer is good. It's so, right? Like it's just right. It's just an answer that many times just gets people to maybe even back off a little bit. Good. It's good enough. I don't need to have any more conversation about it. Right? We put that up there. We put that idea of good is so that we can just avoid the conversation many times. Why would that be? Because if you're being really honest, I mean, good can be an answer, but there's probably something a little bit more going on internally that maybe you're not sharing. Then you're looking to avoid it. When we respond with okay and fine and good, the vagueness that we have in that maybe isn't necessarily intentional. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's like, I don't want to share with you how I really feel, and you really don't want to hear how I feel right now. Well, you don't want to hear that. You got time. You don't have the time to do that. Many times it's just what we've learned. It's what we've experienced culturally. It's how we know just to get through and to reveal some of that stuff. Well, that's painful. What actually may be going on inside. There's reasons why we don't. There's definitely can be reasons. There's been pain that we've experienced because maybe we have shared how we feel and it went onto ears who didn't necessarily respond the way we wanted them to. We're afraid of what somebody's going to think about us. That we should have it all together. That we shouldn't be a mess internally. That we shouldn't have struggles that we're experiencing inwardly. The series is really just about let's get to the bottom of this. Let's talk about what's going on internally. It's something that we've experienced. There's nothing new that we would respond in that manner. But really over this last several years, we found ourselves in a state where we're just constantly like, I just got to plug ahead. I just need to go forward. I just need to move forward. I need to put my head down, and I need to do what I need to do. And never actually take the time to go, maybe for you, the reason you've never shared how you feel is because you just haven't had people who've asked the question. But the series is really about the idea that we need to, these emotions that we experience, the things that maybe we don't want to share, the frustration, the anger, the fear, the worry, the anxiety that we experience, and we feel like maybe we're even bad for experiencing those things. And it's just not true. So we avoid that. But we believe that if we can embrace these emotions that we're experiencing, these are God-given emotions that we all have. Everyone experiences them. And that if we can actually embrace these emotions in healthy ways, we and in turn learn to give them to God in faith, He will actually redeem them for His good, which ultimately means it's for our good as well. That He can take these things and really redeem them for the good. And that's what this is all about. So when I ask the question, how you feeling? Maybe if we're being honest, the answer that we have is, well, I'm anxious. I'm overwhelmed. I really don't know what to do. That anxiety that we feel, that we experience, that overwhelmed feeling, it's not, we're not, nobody's awake, doesn't experience. This is something that I think everybody has experienced in some way, shape, or form. A feeling of worry or nervousness, an unease, especially about things to come, things that we don't know the outcome to. There's this, we begin to feel this overwhelming feeling of, we feel maybe even trapped, or we want to run away, or we want to experience it. We don't want to experience it, so we want to get away from it as much as we possibly can. But it's unavoidable. The author and pastor Max Lucado once said that the presence of anxiety is unavoidable, but the prison of anxiety is optional. And for somebody right now, you're like, I'm getting up. I'm not listening to you. You're telling me what I'm experiencing is optional? And I can understand that. I can understand where you're at in that, because you feel like it just keeps pouring on and pouring on and pouring on and pouring on. And I can't escape. This is what I'm experiencing. I want to experience something different. I'm doing everything I possibly can. I'm going to doctors. I'm taking medicine. I'm trying to all these different things, and it just isn't seeming, it just continues to show up. How can you tell me that this is optional? So Jesus, He once said, in a whole sermon on worry, he mentioned this idea of anxiety and worry, and he said, not worry about tomorrow. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And so when he says this, he's saying this is towards everybody. But it's also telling us, when you look at these two statements, these two quotes, that it tells me that there's an option to that. There's good and there's bad choices that we can make when it comes to how we respond to our anxiety. The overwhelming feeling that we may experience in life when it just seems like we can't seem to catch a break, or I don't know how I'm going to get through this. When we're experiencing this, that there's actually a choice that can be made. In my opinion, I feel like we as humans have a tendency, unless we are taught differently, we handle anxiety in unhealthy ways. We don't do what God has created for us to do. And so then we, in turn, it's a detriment to ourselves. It's a detriment to the people around us. It's a detriment just to our story in general, is that when we are responding in the ways that are unhealthy, that's where it takes us. And I want you to hear something. It's not your fault. This is what we've been taught. And God has something so much better for us. He's created our bodies to help us, our minds to help us deal with these things, to deal with this anxiety, to deal with the overwhelming nature, to deal with our emotions, our pain, our hurts, to protect us. He's created us in this way, but He has a way through all of those things. And when Jesus says that this is what you're going to experience, that already there's worry to be had, that it's going to experience that. When Max Lucado says that the presence of anxiety is going to happen, It means that everyone's included in this. This is a relatable thing that we all experience, whether you're a student or whether you're a parent or whether you're a single mom or whether you are work or you experience anxiety from work and stress from work or whatever it may be, whoever you may be, you have the opportunity to experience anxiety. There's no escaping that. It's how we work through that that's important. And I think there's a great example of this that we see in the Old Testament, the prophet named Elijah who experienced God do some pretty miraculous things in and through him. As a prophet, God would speak through him, so he would speak to the nation of Israel, and he would speak, to correct and to guide and to lead them through God speaking through them. And God did some pretty amazing things. In fact, but the piece that we're going to get into, the part of his story that we're going to get into, is actually coming off the heels of God doing something really amazing. See, as Elijah being a prophet and a well-known prophet, he would be challenged from time to time. And the prophets of Baal, a whole another god that they challenged Elijah. Whose God's going to show up? And Elijah got to witness his God show up in an amazing, miraculous way, in a way that was confounding, upsetting, and ultimately detrimental to those who didn't trust and believe that Elijah's God is the God of all. And we pick up the story in 1 Kings 19, 1 through 5. We see Elijah just off the heels of this amazing experience of God showing up in a mighty way. And we see the King Ahab and the queen. King Ahab, who witnessed all of this, told Jezebel everything that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods deal with me be ever so severely if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that of one of them." So let's just take in what Elijah's experienced in this moment. He's experienced a life-altering moment, a moment where he saw God show up in a way that many will never see, never have seen, and he experienced it, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that blew his mind, blew the minds of all those around him, only to be followed up with this next experience where he's being told that he is going to be killed. No matter what, it's over. Taking you out. Have you ever experienced something really great, and then on the heels of that, you experience something that's like, maybe nobody ever saying, "I'm going to kill you." Hopefully that hasn't been the case. But something that's life-altering, that would really brings down the vibe of what's going on. And I want you to, let's take a look at Elijah's response to what takes place, to what has been said to him. Elijah, man of God, speaking God's words to the people, experiencing God do miraculous things through him. We see right here in verse 3, it says, Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. "I have had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. We see Elijah's response. And can I just be really honest? How relatable is that? I mean, that we see that. Many of us, it's relatable because we understand the feeling. We understand the feeling of things seem to be going so well, then all of a sudden the carpet gets pulled out from underneath of us. And we're on our backside and we're going, I don't know how to do this anymore. I just got through this and now I have to do this. I don't know how I take another step. I don't see the way through this. Why? Why me? And the anxiety and the overwhelming nature of what we're experiencing just pours over us. I understand it. I understand that feeling of I just can't, I'm not going to win. And we see these four responses that come out of Elijah that we all can relate to. The first one we see him just run himself ragged. We see what he has done is he has just gone, put my head down. I'm just going to get through this. We're going to work. I just got to go, just got to go, just got to go, just got to go. That sound familiar? I'm not going to deal with this. I'm just going to move forward through this. I'm going to keep moving, The second thing we see him do is he removed himself from people. He went to Beersheba. He left the one person who's been through all of this with him, who can point him back towards God and say, look what God has done. He's still going to show up. And what he does is he distances himself from that person. He isolates himself. That sound familiar? Does to me. The third thing we see is that his eyes go directly to the negative, to the bad things that he's experiencing. Now, totally understandable. I mean, somebody just threatened to kill him. Probably going to think about that a little bit, right? Probably going to focus on that a little bit. But that's not, we do that and we don't have people telling us they're going to kill us. But we will focus on the negative. We'll see God do something great in our lives, and then the next thing we do, we go, oh, woe is me. And rightfully so. We're human. It's our human nature. But we focus on these negative things. And the last thing that we see that Elijah did is that in the midst of all of this, he forgot God. He forgot that God was in this with him, that God was descending him. Until that moment, he said, I have had enough. This is the stuff that we can understand. We can see ourselves in Elijah. This is relatable to many. And one of that Jesus is teaching, the one that I mentioned earlier, it revolved around anxiety and worry. And towards the end of it, that's when he says, therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. We struggle with many things that cause us to be anxious. We do. Sometimes we're anxious about things that we potentially can be anxious about down the road. We just will let it pour over us and hold us hostage. It's not we'll experience, is what we do with it. Because this is all encompassing. This is what we all experience, this anxiety, this overwhelmed nature, this worry that comes to us. So let's talk, what does that mean for us? What does it mean for you? Because many times we choose not to talk about it or share when somebody says, how you feeling? We don't say that because it's what we begin to think it means about us. So what does that mean about us? Does it mean that you don't follow Jesus? No. Does it mean that you're an emotional basket case? No. Does it mean you're stupid? No. Does it mean you're demon possessed? No. Does it mean you're a failure? No. What does it mean? It means you're human. It means that you aren't the only one who's experiencing this. Jesus on earth experienced this anxiety in human form of what was to come, what he was about to experience. He goes to the Father and says, Father, if it's in your will you please take this cup from me? But ultimately, Lord, I want it to be your will in this. And therein lies the difference. Therein lies that is the game changer right there. Is because what he did is when he's experienced that, he turned his eyes back to the answer, the solution. So when Jesus expressed that, and therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for today already has enough worries of its own. When he was talking about that came off the heels when he says, therefore do not worry about tomorrow. When he said that comes off the heels of a very important scripture where it says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added unto you. That when we have our eyes where they're supposed to be, that's when we can go, okay, I don't need to worry about that. God's got me. We can get through this. Do we all distance myself from others? That's not the answer. That's not the answer that we need. But I have an example that I really think expresses the root of the anxiety that we experience, where it really comes from. So back in early June, I went on an adventure with Scott Ray here, who's a part of this church, and we went on a run, a little bit of a run called the Tough Mudder. It was a long run over obstacles, through mud, cutting yourself up, beating yourself up throughout all of this time. Really not exactly a great decision in my part, okay? But within that, everything was going fine, and there are all these different obstacles. We come across one obstacle that I was not expecting to do what it did to me. It's called the cage crawl. And so basically what happens is there's a fence that's kind of laid down horizontal on the ground over a pit. And in the pit is water with just enough room for get your face up and get some air. And then by using the fence on your back, you pull yourself to the other side. It's about 20, 25 feet in length. And I thought, oh, this is going to be fun. I'm going to love this. And then I went in the water. And I came up and I didn't realize where I was. I go up to gasp for air, and all I'm gathering is water. And in that moment, chaos begins to ensue in my mind. Panic, anxiety. What am I going to do in this moment? And so I'm starting to scramble. I'm like pulling myself, and I don't even know where I'm at. I think I got to turn back around. I don't even know how to turn around. I don't know where I'm at. I can't see anything. I can barely breathe. What am I going to do? And for a moment, in that moment, I thought, this is where I'm going to die. This is crazy. And that all that emotion, all of that anxiety, all that overwhelmed feeling, all the chaos that was going in my mind, it led to this one simple solution, or this one simple cause. I didn't believe that there was a way through. I thought this could potentially be it. I don't see a way through all of this. I don't know how I'm going to get onto the other side of this. And by the grace of God, I was able to catch my wits for a moment and go, okay, just calm down, Nate. And go up and I breathe some air. I open my eyes and I realize, okay, this is where I'm at. Able to get through the other side, forever changed, by the way, by that moment. But it taught me something in that. It really showed me something. The anxiety came from the simple fact that I had no idea how to get through to the other side of this. And that's the beauty of who God is, though. Because in that worry that we don't know a way through, He provides a way through. This is Jesus. Jesus provided the way through all of this. See, Jesus in that anxiety, He didn't stay anxious. He looked to the Father. He provided, and there is a path out of the valley of anxiety. So we've talked about these things that we do that we probably shouldn't do when it comes to our reactions to our anxiety, which is completely understandable because we have to learn how to deal with it. But I believe there's things that we can do. In the letter Paul wrote to the Philippian church, and in the last bit of this letter that he wrote to them, the piece of encouragement, he reminded them that in light of who they are and who they belong to, that regardless of the circumstances that they're experiencing, then they needed to be reminded to do these things. And we pick it up in Philippians chapter 4, verse 4, and it says this. The first thing he says is, rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. He goes on to say, let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer, petition, and thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. See, Paul gives this outline of things that we can do when this world is coming against us, when the darkness seems to be closing in over us, when the weight of our circumstances begin to weigh us down and push us down to the ground. There is responses that can be healthy and get us through, that makes a way through that anxiety, that overwhelming feeling that we have. And the first one is to rejoice in the Lord always. Anybody want to call BS on that one? Some of you hearing that and go, dude, you don't understand the anxiety. There's no way that I can see that in the midst of what I'm going through. What he's saying is that rejoice in the Lord always. I'll say it again, rejoice. The idea that if we can, and maybe you can't at this moment, your mind just can't wrap around this. But it's important to understand that if we get ourselves to this space, that the reaction that we potentially can have is to rejoice in the Lord. How can we do that? Because we're rejoicing in the Lord's grace, that even though my circumstances look ugly and dire and maybe it doesn't look like there's a way through, what I know is that I have a God who will provide a way through. And that in turn should cause me to rejoice. That I can experience his favor, his grace. I can be conscious and glad for his grace. To know that regardless, that he will provide a way through. That he is the help. When you look at Psalm 121, 1 through 2, it says this, I lift my eyes to the mountain, and where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. I need you to hear this. The circumstances that you're experiencing are not beyond the creator of the heavens and the earth. He sees a way through it. He sees a way through the darkness and the circumstances that you're experiencing. Is it going to be pretty? Maybe not. But he is going to provide a way through. So when we rejoice, we get a choice to where we look. Because let's be honest, I know this is true for myself. When that overwhelming feeling, when that anxiety begins to pressure in, many times I don't look to God first. I look in the mirror and go, what are you going to do about this? I look to others. What are you going to do about this? When my first response my eyes should be look towards the mountains. Because where does my help come from? It comes from the Lord. We get a choice of where we look, where we go to. And once we've got ourselves, once we're looking in the right direction, that hits the second piece of our response. Can be by prayer and petition with thanksgiving. With thanksgiving. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. Not only do we direct our attention towards him, but we actually ask him for help. Let's be honest, that's not always that's not where we go to first. But he will provide the help that we desire. See, the anxiety triggers something in all of us. Every single one of us, it triggers something. And what it should, we have a choice. And initially, what our anxiety triggers is despair, isn't it? What am I going to do? How are we going to get through this? This doesn't look, there's no hope. But what it should do, if we get ourselves into the right space, get our minds focused, our eyes focused, and our minds focused to where it needs to be, our actual choice is that anxiety should trigger prayer. That's our first response. That's where we go to. Instead of running from or running to something else, we actually turn to him. And when we turn to him, what prayer and thanksgiving does for us, it redirects our vision. It redirects our eyes. It gets our eyes going in the right direction. Psalm 15 says this, call on me in the day of trouble and I will deliver you and you will honor me. That he will deliver us. He makes promises that when we focus on him, Jesus was explicitly, he spoke so powerfully about this. When he says this, he says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. You do not have because you do not ask. There's not a lot of room for trying to, there's no uncertainty in this. He's pretty plain and simple, like, ask. Ask. Is it going to look the way you want it to look? I don't know. But what I can tell you is that he is good and he will walk with you through that. That he will be present, that he will be in the midst of that. So once we get our eyes in the right place, once we get our hearts and we're focused in the right place, we take these worries, these troubles, and we take it to him and we leave it. We don't take it to him and then, I'll just carry this back with me. We trust him. We leave it at his feet. Too many times we go back and we pick up that stuff. And we let it own us and own our lives. But once again, it's very clear within the pages of Scripture. What God says is to cast your cares on the Lord and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken. Prayers and petition and thanksgiving is a life of a righteous person. And what he's saying is when we go and we take those things, we take all of those and lay them at his feet, and we actually leave them there, we won't be shaken. That he will walk through it with us. We leave it with thanksgiving. But did you know that anxiety never shares space with gratitude? But gratitude will push off that anxiety. The fourth thing that we can gain from the letter from Paul to the Philippians as a good response to anxiety is that once we start getting these things in line, we start thinking about the things that are good and worthy of praise. Once we've left it with God, we should be able to have some space to begin to see what God sees. See that there is hope on the other side of this. See, that's the thing, is that so many times we get so lost and think that God is so distant, but God is so near. And what he sees, he doesn't see us in this he doesn't see us as these people who are just covered in darkness and we're not worth anything. We're unworthy of his presence in our life. In fact, he sees the opposite. He sees people who he has his people, his chosen people, God's people, his sons and daughters, that he wants the best for their lives. He just needs for us to trust him enough to let him guide us. To trust him enough that he will work through all of these things. That we can begin to think about greater things. Wouldn't that be nice? Isn't that a nice thought? Instead of being trapped by the world's anxiety and worry, we can be thinking about the greater things of his kingdom and his righteousness. And the piece that I love the most about this Philippians 4 is that 5th verse, where it says, let your gentleness be evident to all. The idea that everyone experiences it, everybody sees, and everybody's going to understand the anxiety and maybe the reactions that you've had in the past. But what will draw people and cause them to ask questions is when we respond in the way that God is guiding us to respond. That gentleness that we experience, because anxiety doesn't bring gentleness, does it? It doesn't. But the gentleness will be evident to all, and it will draw people to him. Now I want to take a moment, and I want to return back to Elijah. We return back to his story, because we left it in a place of he's really kind of giving him a bum rap for what he's experiencing. But we've all experienced it. But what was amazing is that God wasn't done with him. When he reached out and when he was searching for answers from God, God gave him some direction. It was on the side of a mountain. You find this starting in verse 11. It says this, the Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Then a voice said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? What I love about what's taking place and what is so relatable to Elijah's story is that when the weight of the world shows up, when there's anxiety, when we have that overwhelmed feeling, what we experience is absolute chaos. Chaos all over the place. Our mind is running like rampant. We can't calm ourselves down. Our blood pressure's up. Our pulse rate is up. We are just going through it. And it just feels like absolute chaos. And what the Lord is telling Elijah in the midst of his anxiety and his overwhelming feeling is that the Lord is not in the chaos. We have to be able to get ourselves to a place where we can hear that still small voice that's outside of that chaos. That we have to get ourselves to that place where we can truly answer the Lord when he asks us this question, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? I have more for you. He understands the anxiety, the overwhelmed feelings that we have, but he has something more for us. And today I understand when you hear that, when you've heard all of this, you're going, you don't understand what I'm going through. I don't necessarily understand what you're going through. But I think the most important thing that we need to gain from all of this is that we need to be willing to do what Elijah was not willing to do. And that's to have people in our life that will point us back to Jesus. To not isolate ourselves. That we need, for some, we just need to be able to talk about what's going on and to feel safe about it and to be able to share and not be judged and to be able to just to really get to the root and find some help. I'm here to tell you today that you might need some help. We all need help. So with this, we understand that having these conversations may open up something for someone. And so on the seats around you, there's a card that says it's the how you feeling card, and on the back side of it, some places that you can write. Today, we are here to let you know that if you just need to talk with someone, we're here. We love you. We want to care for you. We want to help point you back to the solution. And we're not going to do it with judgment, but we're going to do it in love. And so that the biggest piece that you may be struggling with is, I don't know how to share this. Today we want to offer that for you. We have a couple of different options of how to reach out to us. On that card, you can fill out the information there, and there's little drop boxes. They're very little, and they blend into the wall, so very sorry about that. But there's these boxes back there that are next to the offering boxes at each door. Fill that out and just drop it in there. Maybe you have your phone on you. And we would just ask you, if you have your phone on you and you're okay with that, we want you to text LISTENER to 94000. And somebody's going to get back with you. Because it's too important. You matter. What you're feeling, it matters. And you may just need some help getting through that. And so I want to give just a moment for each and everybody today. So could you just bow your heads in this moment? We'll give some space for you to respond. Because we're here for you. An opportunity to reach out and just ask for someone just to listen.